The great crystal palace of Varian lay in an eerie, broken silence after days of brutal war, its once bright halls dimmed by smoke and fear. Outside, the sky still flickered with the last traces of enemy fire, but inside the royal chamber the true tragedy unfolded. Princess Aralyn, known across the stars for her silver glow and gentle strength, lay weak on the cold, shining floor, her light fading as the poison from the Razak swarm spread through her veins. Her people, tall and luminous beings who usually carried themselves with grace and calm, stood helpless around her. The explosion that had torn through the palace dome had released a toxin crafted only for killing Varian life, a weapon so cruel that even the most skilled healers could do nothing. Their treatments dissolved before the poison, their powers lost their shine, and hope slipped from the room like air from a wound. The High Regent, old and wise, bowed his head and whispered that nothing more could be done. The royal court lowered their eyes, accepting a loss that would shake their entire empire. In that heavy silence came a sudden crash as the chamber doors burst open, the sound echoing like thunder against crystal walls. A human soldier, armor scorched and breath ragged, stumbled inside. His name was Mason Halley, a lieutenant fighting to protect civilians during the palace attack. He had no idea that stepping into this sacred place without permission was forbidden. He didn't even see the guards at first, he only saw a dying girl on the floor. Instinct pushed him forward. "Hey, stay with me," he said, dropping to one knee beside her. The royal guards shouted warnings, telling him not to touch her, but he acted too quickly, reaching for her hand in simple concern, not understanding the danger or the rules of this alien court. The moment his skin brushed hers, the world flashed into pure white light. The healers gasped as glowing waves rippled from the princess's body, burning away the toxin as if it were made of smoke. Aralyn's chest lifted with a sudden breath, and color-soft silver and bright returned to her face. Her eyes opened, wide and full of surprise, as strength rushed back into her body like a rising tide. Every member of the royal court stared, stunned, frozen in disbelief. They had watched her fade for hours, had felt hope slip between their fingers, and now, with a single accidental touch, she was whole again. The healers stood speechless. The guards lowered their weapons. Even the regent could not form words. Aralyn looked at the human who still knelt beside her, his expression a mix of confusion and fear. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with wonder. Mason looked around, startled by all the glowing eyes staring at him. I didn't do anything," he stammered, though he clearly had. No one in the room understood how or why it happened. All they knew was that their princess lived, and a simple human touch had achieved what all their advanced healing arts could not. In that single moment, everything changed. The future of their war, the fate of their world, and the destiny of Mason Halley began to shift in ways no one in that chamber could yet imagine. The human who walked in by accident had just rewritten the story of an entire empire. The shock of Aralyn's sudden recovery hung in the air long after the blinding light faded, leaving the royal healers scrambling around her in disbelief as their glowing tools scanned her body again and again, confirming the impossible truth. The poison that had been killing her was gone, cleared as if someone had wiped away a stain, and every result pointed to the same impossible answer: the toxin had been neutralized the moment Mason touched her. Aralyn sat up slowly, still unsteady but very much alive, her silver eyes fixed on the human who had saved her as if trying to understand him. "How did you do this?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder and confusion. Mason, still catching his breath after the chaos he had run through, shook his head, too stunned to respond. The healers spoke in quick, shaken voices as they explained what their scans showed. The toxin was designed to target all known Varian life but reacted strangely to the presence of human biology. as if Mason's touch had reversed the toxin structure. No one could explain why. The royal court began whispering to one another, struggling to accept that a species they considered young, chaotic, and scientifically unremarkable, had accomplished what all their ancient knowledge and advanced medicine had failed to do. The High Regent approached Mason with slow, respectful steps, his shimmering robes trailing behind him. "Lieutenant Hawley," he said with grave seriousness, "your kind may hold the only defense against the swarm's darkest weapon." Before Mason could reply, loud alarms suddenly blasted through the palace, flashing red lights across the crystal walls and sending guards running. A deep, cold voice came through the communication channels, echoing through the entire royal chamber. It belonged to the commander of the Razak swarm, whose emotionless words carried a cruel, cold certainty. "Varian Empire," the voice hissed, "we know a human has neutralized our toxin. Surrender the human to us, or your world will be turned to dust." Fear rippled through the court, their once glowing faces dimming with dread. They knew the swarm did not bluff. The Razak armada was merciless and vast, and now that their most powerful weapon had been challenged by a single human, they would throw everything they had into reclaiming control. Some advisors whispered about giving Mason up to buy time, others argued that such a betrayal would doom them later. But Aralen rose before any decision could be made, her voice strong despite her earlier weakness. "No," she declared, her silver light blazing again. "We will not surrender him. He saved my life, and now we will save all our lives together." The room fell silent as she turned to Mason, standing tall and determined despite the recent attack. "I need your help," she said. "My people need your people." Mason felt hundreds of alien eyes turn toward him. He wasn't sure what scared him more, the responsibility suddenly placed on his shoulders, or the way Aralen was looking at him, as if he represented hope itself. The weight of an entire world pressed on him, but he straightened, wiped the sweat and dust from his face, and gave a small nod. "I'm in," he said. "Whatever you need." A quiet wave of relief spread through the court, though fear still lingered. The swarm would return, stronger and angrier than ever, and the Empire had only hours to prepare. But something had changed, something powerful. For the first time in their long, shining history, the Varian Empire looked to a human not as a visitor or a fighter, but as a key to survival. And deep in her recovering heart, Aralen felt a spark of hope she had not felt since the war began. A hope tied to the human who had saved her with nothing more than an accidental touch. The palace war room glowed with lines of bright blue light as maps of stars. Fleets and battle routes floated above the long crystal table, and Mason found himself standing in the middle of commanders who were taller, wiser, and far more powerful than any human soldier he had ever met. Yet all their strength and knowledge meant nothing against the Razak swarm's toxin and endless armies, and that truth hung over the room like a shadow. The Varian commanders studied Mason with thoughtful but doubtful eyes, unsure how a human could help them win a war they were already losing. Many whispered quietly, questioning whether Aralen's survival had been luck or some strange accident, but the princess stood beside Mason with calm confidence. Her presence silenced every doubt. She explained to her commanders that the swarm had been so certain of its victory because it understood their tactics completely. Centuries of perfect formations, flawless patterns, and elegant, predictable strategies. Their beauty had become their weakness. Then she turned to Mason, giving him the floor. Mason took a deep breath before stepping forward, tapping the holographic display to show a section of space filled with moving ships. "Your battle lines are amazing," he said honestly, "but the swarm has studied them for years. They know where you'll move before you move." The commanders exchanged uneasy glances. Mason continued, zooming in on a chaotic set of human fighter recordings' wild maneuvers. Sudden direction changes, risky dives, messy coordination that looked like madness. Humans don't fight in patterns, he explained. We fight in chaos. We act on instinct, not perfection. And chaos breaks systems that rely on prediction. The Varian leaders watched the footage with wide eyes, some shocked, others amused, and a few horrified at the reckless nature of human combat. But Arellen watched with growing admiration. This unpredictable style, she said softly, may be exactly what we need. With her support, the commanders agreed to let Mason train their pilots. Over the next hours, Mason found himself in the vast Varian flight hangars, teaching elegant Starwing pilots how to fly in the wild, crazy, rule-breaking way humans did. The Varian fighters were sleek and graceful, made for perfect arcs and shining formations, but now they had to twist, dive, scatter, and zigzag like startled birds. At first, the pilots struggled. They found the methods confusing, messy, uncomfortable. But Mason encouraged them, explaining how unpredictability forced the enemy to react instead of control. Slowly, the pilots adapted. Their movements became sharper, more surprising, more chaotic. For the first time since the war began, Mason saw a hint of fire in their eyes. Arellen visited the training each hour, watching the progress with a look that mixed pride and curiosity. She studied Mason too, his quick thinking, his simple explanations, his steady confidence even when surrounded by beings far more powerful than himself. She wondered how someone so ordinary by the standards of the galaxy could change everything so quickly. And though she did not speak it aloud, she felt something warm and new in her chest each time he looked her way. Meanwhile, the alarms across the palace kept ticking down, the Razak swarm armada drawing closer with every passing moment. Soon the skies would burn again. Soon the final battle would begin. Mason understood the danger, the weight of the lives depending on him, but he pushed it down, focusing on the training. He had no powers, no ancient knowledge, no glowing energy like the Varian people. But he had creativity, courage, and the human instinct to survive against impossible odds. When the last simulation ended and the pilots flew their new chaotic patterns to perfection, Mason looked out at the shining fleet launching into position and felt the first spark of real hope. The Empire was no longer fighting alone. And for the first time, humanity had a chance to reshape the fate of a galaxy that had never expected them to matter. Dark clouds of smoke drifted across the sky as the Razak swarm returned in full force, filling the horizon with thousands of sharp, wing-shaped ships that glowed with red engines like the eyes of a hungry beast. Their arrival turned the peaceful night of Varian into a field of burning stars. And the moment the first enemy shot streaked downward, the entire planet shook with the thunder of war. Mason launched from the palace hangar in a borrowed fighter, its controls strange beneath his hands but responsive enough to follow the wild, human-style flight he had taught the Varian pilots. Beside him, Arellen's sleek royal fighter shone like a blade of silver light as she led her people into battle. The sky exploded around them in showers of sparks, beams of energy slicing through clouds, leaving trails of fire across the heavens. Varian ships moved differently, now no longer in perfect lines but in unpredictable, swirling waves, darting and twisting with messy elegance that confused the swarm's automated targeting systems. The enemy attacked in tight, deadly patterns. But the new Varian tactics broke their rhythm, leaving gaps that Mason guided the pilots to strike through. Arellen's voice echoed over the comms, steady and strong as she warned him of threats and encouraged her fighters with calm commands. The swarm commander roared in frustration across the battlefield channel, unable to understand the sudden chaos in the Varian defense. Explosions painted the sky in red, white and gold as one enemy ship after another fell to the new tactics. But just when victory seemed possible, A massive shape emerged from the darkness of space, a dreadnought so large it seemed to blot out the stars behind it. Its hull pulsed with a sickly green glow, the same color as the toxin that had nearly taken Oralin's life, and the instant Mason saw it, a cold shiver ran down his spine. This was the swarm's ultimate weapon, the same machine that powered their poison, and its enormous cannon began to charge with a deep, threatening hum. Oralin realized the danger immediately. "If it fires," she said, voice tight with fear, "our cities will fall. My people will die." Without hesitation, Mason pushed his fighter forward, racing toward the dreadnought through a storm of enemy fire. Oralin followed close behind, matching his speed, her silver glow brightening as if she was gathering every bit of strength she had left. They fired at the dreadnought's shield again and again, but the energy barrier barely flickered. Their shots were like raindrops hitting a mountain. The dreadnought's cannon grew brighter, swelling with toxic power that could sweep across the planet in a single blast. Desperation clawed at Mason's chest as he realized they were running out of time. Then an idea hit him, wild and dangerous. "Oralin," he said, breathing hard. "Your energy. My biology. When we combined them before, the toxin broke. What if we use that again? What if we merge our ship's fields and hit the cannon with everything we have?" She hesitated only a heartbeat. "It could destroy us," she whispered. "But it might save everyone." He felt her eyes on him even through the battle, and then she said quietly, "Together." They linked their ships, their energy fields touching in a swirl of blue and white light. Their combined power grew hotter, brighter, rising like a star ready to burst. The dreadnought fired its massive cannon at the same moment they unleashed their merged blast, and the sky erupted in a blinding explosion that shook the heavens. For a moment, everything vanished into light. Then the dreadnought cracked apart, splitting like broken stone as its own weapon turned against it. The Razak armada collapsed, their systems failing as the core ship fell. But Mason's fighter, caught in the shock wave, spun wildly, engines tearing apart, smoke filling the cockpit as Oralin screamed his name and dove after him. The sky burned above them while she chased the falling wreck, refusing to let him disappear into the flames of victory. Fire streaked across the sky as Mason's damaged fighter tumbled downward like a dying star, metal screaming and sparks bursting from its shattered wings while smoke filled the cockpit and stung his eyes. He fought to stay conscious, gripping the controls even though they barely responded, and every warning light on the dashboard flashed red as the world spun faster and faster below him. Through the roar of alarms, he heard Oralin's voice calling his name again and again, full of fear he had never heard from her before. Her silver fighter darted through falling debris to reach him, weaving dangerously close to burning wreckage, determined not to lose him after everything they had survived. As Mason's ship spiraled into the upper atmosphere, fire blazing across its hull, Oralin made a desperate move. She flew beneath him, locked her ship's energy field to his, and forced the falling fighter to slow just enough for her to grab hold with a tractor beam. The strain made her ship shake violently, its engines whining from the pressure, but she refused to let go. Mason, half dizzy and choking on smoke, looked out the cracked glass and saw her glow surrounding him like a shield. With every last bit of power she had, Oralin guided the burning wreck toward the ground, skidding across a long stretch of sand outside the capital. The impact was brutal, throwing sparks and metal in all directions. But when the wreck finally slid to a stop, she was already out of her cockpit, running toward him with trembling hands and wide, frightened eyes. She tore open the fighter's door with a burst of her energy and pulled him out before the engine exploded behind them. Mason coughed hard, struggling to breathe, but he managed to smile weakly. "I guess we won," he whispered. Oralin pressed her forehead to his, shaking as relief washed over her. "Do not ever fall from the sky again," she said, her voice breaking. I will not survive it." And for a long moment, she simply held him as the wind carried away the smoke of battle. Around them, soldiers and pilots began to land across the field, cheering and crying as news spread fast the Razak swarm had fallen. The dreadnought was destroyed, their command was broken, and their weapons were dead. For the first time in many years, the Varian skies were free. When Arellen helped Mason stand, he noticed the way her people looked at him now, not with doubt or fear, but with deep respect, even awe. He had been a stranger, an outsider who had walked into their palace by accident, and now he stood as the man who had helped save their world. The High Regent approached with slow, humble steps and bowed to Mason, something he had never done even to leaders of other empires. "You carry no glow, no ancient power," the regent said, "and yet you have changed the fate of our people. Your courage has rewritten the future." Mason felt heat rise to his face, embarrassed by the attention, but Arellen stood proudly beside him, her hand gently holding his arm as if she would never let him fall again. As the sun broke through the smoke-filled sky, shining down on the wounded but victorious people, a strange quiet settled over the battlefield. The war had ended, but the cost, the fear, and the memories still hung heavy in the air. Mason thought of the moments when he nearly died, of the dreadnought's terrible power, and of the explosion that had nearly taken him away from this world forever. But every time he met Arellen's silver eyes, strong and warm despite her exhaustion, the fear slowly faded. The Varian people had found hope in him, but he realized he had found something precious in them too, something worth fighting for beyond duty or chance. As rescuers carried the wounded and soldiers raised their banners again, Arellen leaned close and whispered, "You are not alone here. Mason, not anymore." And in that gentle promise, he felt the beginning of something new, bright, and unspoken growing between them, something as unexpected and powerful as the touch that had saved her life. Ryland followed the guards down a long silver hallway, his heart thumping as he sensed that something important waited for him ahead. The walls glowed faint blue, like they were alive, and small symbols floated across them as if reacting to his presence. The guards did not speak, but their tense shoulders told him that whatever was happening was not normal even for them. At the end of the passage, a round door slid open without a sound, revealing a vast chamber filled with swirling lights and soft hums. In the center stood a group of elders dressed in flowing robes, each one carrying the same pale markings that the princess had on her skin. They watched him with a mix of awe and fear, as if he was something impossible. Raylan wanted to step back, but the guards gently pushed him forward. One elder approached him slowly, holding a crystal sphere that shimmered like water. The elder raised it toward Raylan's chest, and the sphere glowed bright, sending a warm wave through the air. Gasps echoed through the chamber as the light in the sphere turned gold, a color the aliens whispered about with trembling voices. Raylan felt strange, as if the warmth inside him was answering the sphere like an old friend. The elder touched his shoulder and told him that the power he carried was something believed to be lost for many generations, a rare energy their ancestors used to heal and protect. They had searched for it across worlds but never found it, so for it to appear in a human at the exact moment their princess was dying felt like fate. Ryland tried to speak, but the elder lifted a hand to calm him. They were not angry, the elder said. They were astonished. The royal family joined the circle then, led by the queen, who now looked steadier and stronger than before, thanks to her daughter's sudden recovery. She looked at Raylan with eyes filled with gratitude, but also with deep curiosity. She asked him to step into the center of the room, where a tall crystal pillar rose from the ground, pulsing faintly. Raylan obeyed, feeling the pull of the pillar like a heartbeat calling to him. When he placed his hand on it, the pillar flashed with the same golden light that had healed the princess. The light spread out in waves across the room, touching every person present. The elders fell to their knees, whispering ancient words, and the queen covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. The pillar reacted to him, showing swirling images, memories of old battles, worlds drifting in darkness, and ancestors using the same golden power to bring life back to dying lands. Raylan didn't understand the visions completely, but he felt them deep inside, as if something forgotten had awakened. The room vibrated gently as the visions faded, leaving the chamber silent. Everyone stared at him with a mix of hope and disbelief. The queen stepped closer and told him that the power inside him might be the key to saving not just their world but many others, threatened by a spreading sickness of energy that was slowly destroying galaxies. He was not just an outsider who had arrived by accident. He had been brought here for a reason. Raylan felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders, heavier than anything he had carried before. He had always been an ordinary boy with simple dreams, but now the fate of an entire alien kingdom, and perhaps more, rested on a power he never knew he had. As the golden glow faded from the crystal pillar, the queen told him gently that everything would change from this moment on, and he needed to decide whether he would accept the path that had opened for him or walk away from it forever.